Welcome to our Top Restored Leaders interview series. My name is Yurawel Deruin, founder and CEO at Intersectional Innovations Consulting. In this series, I will interview pioneers who embody what it means to be a restored leader. Working with others, a restored leader values trust, influence, buy-in, transparency, and clarity. All key elements for effective collaboration and growth. This is akin to the way a good gardening tool works in harmony with a gardener's experience and knowledge, completing their skills and enhancing their ability to care for the garden. In essence, a restored leader, much like a well-maintained gardening tool, is essential for cultivating a healthy, thriving, and productive environment where both the leader and their team can grow and flourish together. So the first question is about celebrating success. And I was wondering if you can share with us how, from either experiences you've had or even work that you're doing right now, do you celebrate individual and team success from that perspective of trying to foster positive and motivated work environments?
Yeah, I think it starts with the client feedback. So whoever you're supporting, I think it's important to start with who was impacted and then celebrate who caused that impact. So we start with, right now we're supporting executive leaders. So the chief operating officer had some great comments. I asked them to just put that in writing. We're going to share that with the team. And then we shared it with the other executives, because the way that we're moving through the process is one executive at a time. We're revamping their process. So being able to share those successes from the word of the other team members really helps the buy-in moving forward. So we start with the client testimonials and the client success, data points, and direct feedback, and make sure that the proper team members get credit for that. We want to celebrate who was involved, and there's a lot of people, but there's always someone driving it. So we focus on the whole team, but who drove this result, and we really want it to come from the client perspective, taking that consultative approach in-house, essentially building our own consulting firm. So we want to celebrate the client success through who delivered that result. So that's how we're doing it now, and it's going over really well. It creates a great team environment, and it creates accountability for the team because they know they had that impact. And so getting that feedback from who was impacted has been really helpful to keep us moving forward.
So to me, this is first of all about understanding your people, because your praise doesn't mean anything if it doesn't hit the person that it's going to. So you have to know what revs people's engines. If you don't know your people well enough to do that, they're not your people yet. So your first step is get to know your people well enough to know which praise lights them up from the inside. There's something called Shen in Chinese medicine, and it refers to the amount of sparkle in somebody's eyes. We've all seen after tragedy the dullness that shows up in people's eyes, right? Your ability to enhance someone's Shen is everything, but you have to know how to do it. So know your people first. Know them first. Second, make sure you say what they're doing that's good, really specifically. I do not want to hear, "Atta girl, good job." I want to hear, "Suzanne, last week you wrote an email to our client that causes so much trouble, and you saved so many headaches with the poise and eloquence that you wrote that email. I'm so grateful that you were the one to tackle that problem. Thank you."
So that's a great question, because, I think that's something that as leaders, we have the most challenge with, right? Because there's always something to accomplish and overcome and what have you. So we don't really take out the time to celebrate, right? Yeah. And people celebrate in different ways, right? So yes. If I could just take a step back for a moment, one of the things that I truly have kept as a result of my military leadership, military experience, is really knowing your soldier, right? If you truly know your people, right? So in order to celebrate someone, you have to know what they like, right? Yeah. And you can't figure out what they like when you're trying to, like, I don't know if you ever did a birthday party. It's like, well, what does Rob like, right? And if you try to, at that moment, you'll never get the right gift, right? Or you never get the right celebration. So there's a need as leaders to really truly understand and know your people, what makes them tick, but more importantly, what gives them life, what gives them that energy, what puts, wind in their sail. And if you really have a great understanding of that, When it comes time to celebrate, it's a very natural process because you know what they like. Do they like accolades? Do they need just a simple email? Do they need a the CEO to say, hey, thank you, right? Or they just need to give them more space to do more things, right? So again, knowing your people first, I think, is the true element of celebration, because you can always have a mismatch in celebrating their accomplishments if you really don't know them. So that's like step number one. Yeah. And if you do that and do that well, you actually celebrate, because you build a crescendo, right? So that individuals at every phase of the project or the effort itself, you're trying to say great job, but and then at the same time providing some feedback. That way it can always be better. And then at the end, you figure out a way to give them their own platform as well as amplify their voice, right? So and especially in senior roles, we get a lot of different inputs and contributions from many different team members, right? And some team members' contribution is more than others, and we understand that and know that. However, they all need, everyone that contributes still needs some level of acknowledgement.
I think the important part is to celebrate a lot and not to do so in oh, good job, but to be genuinely excited and happy for people. And when you are genuinely excited and happy about success, people can feel that. And success comes in all different ways within work and home and all of that. And it should be celebrated, even if it's not necessarily a work thing. When you know that your coworkers, your employees are having something going on in their personal life that's a big success, you want to celebrate that too. It doesn't mean throw a party, but be like, wow, that is so cool. Congratulations. And if you're sincere about that, it makes a world of difference. If you're not sincere, then saying it is, just kind of embarrassing. Like, oh, checked it off my list, check. But when you acknowledge, especially the work that your employees do, that your peers do, that your superiors do as well, sending an email to someone saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That was awesome. Or that report was fabulous. That just fosters this warm relationship between people, and it makes a huge difference.
Customer success include marketing, sales, and product that are all geared towards making our customers happy and solving their problems. And we award success, obviously, based on project milestones, timelines, all of that. We also reward them monetarily. So we have a quarterly bonus system, which has worked fantastically to retain our people. Since we implemented that, I don't recall anyone leaving us. We have a very committed team, which is a bit unheard of nowadays.
Absolutely,
yeah, and our team, they have it's a software company, so daily stand up and workflows and milestones and hitting them is very, very clear when they're successful, when we're on time. And I also provide feedback from customers. Our customer success team members also bring back customer feedback, encouraging the engineers and letting them know that their real hard work is being impactful and useful in actual field and actually patients. So, kind of helping the entire team understand what we do and how their work contribute to society and the world. I think that's been helpful from a softer side into, the non-monetary side of encouraging them.
Okay, my next question is around inspiring equity, belonging, and inclusion as advocacy within your work teams or spaces. So if you could just share an example of how you've championed equity and inclusion within either a team or organization, and how you're doing that specifically with a priority of making sure that community members belong and that decision-making is supporting that.
Yeah, I think that it starts with the culture of accountability for our leaders to understand that everyone is equal and this really shouldn't be a conversation. Everyone should have the same fair chance. So we set the expectations from the initial conversation that everyone who's qualified is being considered, and it's really non-negotiable. So we want to set us up for success to make sure that from the very first call all the way through the process, that it's just equal. That's it. It's not anything else. And what we do is we do, of course, hit the normal paths when we're recruiting and for talent, but we also make sure that we're doing at least one or two very specific diversity job boards, websites, partnerships in the community to make sure that we're getting an equal fair share of candidates. We also go through our job descriptions very carefully to make sure that candidates feel like they can apply even if they don't match 100%, because oftentimes you may have someone that's very talented, they meet 80 or 90% of the job description and they don't feel like that's enough. It's more than enough. So we want to give you the chance to apply and grow those skills. So it's a conversation from start to finish, but it's a non-negotiable for us that this is just part of who we are. It's the fabric of what we do. And so I think setting that clear tone and expectation that the best person's moving forward, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, doesn't matter, that it really just frees us up from the process because we're not hyper focused on it to where we're forcing a hire, but we're also not ignoring the best candidate because of some unjust reason or unbiased reason. So we want to just set it up from success that the right person goes through. And to our leaders' credit, they often say, I would prefer a diversity candidate in this role. I need to grow my team in that aspect. We don't have enough in the leadership ranks. So it's a conversation that's now spread throughout our organization to really become more of the fabric of what we do.
So currently I'm on the board of the National Speakers Association of New York City, and our chapter is very diverse. So we like to do our best to make sure that the board is diverse and that the speakers that are coming to us are diverse as well. So just at least paying attention to who we are asking to sit in the seats is number one. But on a biological level, this is going to be a different answer than people are used to hearing. But on a biological level, there are things that happen physiologically that create exclusion, that happen subconsciously, that are happening on a hormonal level, that are not really anybody's fault. So as a white woman, I believe it is part of my job to encourage other people that look like me to say, listen, you probably are othering other people. You might not know it. This is why. This is the biological process that's happening in you while you do it. And this is how you overcome it. You have to work on purpose to overcome it. It's not natural. It's not automatic. We are designed to keep each other out in certain circumstances. That's what our biology does because it protects our resources. It protects our tribe. It protects our crew. These are all very important things. So if we are going to work through this process, we have to somehow move the morality to the side for a moment and say, listen, there's another layer going on here that needs to be addressed. And so I think this is something that I talk with people about frequently because I do think it is part of my role to say, I don't really care if you think you're othering people or not. You are. And this is how we fix it.
Yes. So, in inclusive environments, you have to preach curiosity, because curiosity is a very, it's an attribute that allows you to suspend what you think is true and learn and being open to new ideas. Because if you don't have this very, natural curiosity about yourself, one is you will only hold on to the things you know. And you will limit what comes in to expand that knowledge or to more importantly, challenge it, right? So in my role as a DEI practitioner, I'm looking how to positively challenge individuals to be more curious about the other, right? Because you have to understand, especially in the United States and in some countries as well, some regions as well, but primarily the United States, it has the most opportunity to really be exposed to the other because there's so many different segments that we have put labels on as individuals. Absolutely. So again, the first thing is to really understand, what your curiosity level is, and then feed it and make it grow. Because I like to talk about inclusion from a journey of being culturally curious to being culturally aware, then to have, I'd say that from culturally curious to cultural humility, because again, you have to understand that you don't know everything, then to awareness, and then to cultural honoring, right? So when you say cultural honoring, it's one thing to learn about a segment to take advantage of them, right? To understand how to win against them. It's another to learn about a particular, as we said, to build them up, right? So again, it's all about a shift in mindset as what do I want from them, or what do I want to give to them? And if you just think about it in those ways, you'd be surprised on how you can alter your strategy without really changing the tactics, because you're expanding it to how do I help? It's really about speaking to their aspirations as opposed to their deficits, right? So what does individuals want to be? What does a specific segment want to be? And how do you support that? And now you understand, okay, well, how do I support that? Well, there's barriers. There's barriers to equity. There's barriers to cultural intelligence. There's barriers to access, right? So are those systemic, necessary, or are they absolutely exclusive? Right. And this is where the challenge piece comes in, is how do you challenge these systemic barriers to equity to ensure that people can feel included? And I think, again, by starting with the individual, understanding, okay, I don't know things. Hopefully, I want to learn more from a very positive perspective. And when I know them, I'm going to use it to uplift, not to take advantage. And again, it's a very simple thing. And I spoke nothing about the workplace and promotions and mentorship. But again, if you don't have that firm foundation as to what you're trying to accomplish for, everything that's built on top of that will probably topple down.
You know, one of the hats that I wear, I serve on the board of directors of a community theater. And we put on one play a year. We do a bunch of other things during the year, but we put on one big play a year. And any British people will know it's called a panto. And it's a fairy tale, but rewritten for panto audience. It's very strange. Anyway, this last year we had a cast of 28 people on the stage, plus all the backstage people. And the ages of the cast went from 8 to, I don't know, mid to late 60s. Like, if you want to talk about diversity of ages, we had it. We had people from, we counted the number of countries, but I can't remember. It was like 14 different countries within this 28 thing. We're expats in Switzerland. So there were Swiss people too, but it's an English play. But people from all over the world. One of our cast members was a refugee from Ukraine who was just learning English. And so she's doing an English play when she's just learning English. Like, talk about brave.
For sure.
We have everybody along racial spectrums. We had everybody along political spectrums, age, gender spectrums. We had it all. And you would have thought, okay, this is going to be a complicated group to work with because there's so many differences. But the key is we had this unified goal of putting on this play, and everybody was focused on the goal, and everybody was focused on helping everybody else succeed. And so nobody cared that somebody had a different political view than they did. And nobody cared about any differences that we had. Our focus was on coming together to create this play. And I think that is the most important aspect. When we talk about DEI, we forget that inclusion thing. We want everyone together working on the same goal. And that is really a function of leadership. If we're constantly dividing people up, and if we'd said, oh gosh, well, we really need a unified cast, so let's get rid of the girl who doesn't speak English, even though she's an incredibly talented dancer and we need a dancer. Let's get rid of this person for this reason and this person for that reason. And so we can just have this unified cast. It wouldn't have been this rich and full experience. Instead, we cast everybody that had the skill to do the job, regardless of their background. And we worked towards this one purpose.
I think partly how we treat equity inclusion is to not distinguish, to not call out. We've got our mission of helping the world helping our customers and health organizations provide better care, faster care, cheaper care. So we have a mixed team, and you know, with our engineering team, as you know, it's mostly male. We do have excellent female programmers as well, and I find it's also about using their talents and their strengths in terms of a common goal. So we try to balance the male-female ratio. I think working remotely also help focus on the company's objectives. It also lessens I would call the gossips and the bullying or other hostile work environment factors just don't exist and can't really last remotely. So I find that an aspect that I'm fortunate to have in terms of the work environment. We do group team retreats or visits, and because we are across different countries, so I personally visit, you know, all of my team members across multiple countries. And that's, you know, goes back to celebration and celebrating their success, hence our success. So, you know, while we don't have, you know, the variety of equity inclusion events, I think everyone feels that they're treated equally and celebrated for where their strengths are. I'd say a lot of our customer success managers are, we train them on empathy, and actually they're natural at understanding the customer perspective, men and women. I think I'd say they're probably, I'm just counting more female employees that are in those roles, and then more engineers and more male engineers, just kind of the nature of the workforce. So, you know, a lot of the work that we do in the field are all about equity inclusion, particularly lifting women and the underserved out of poverty, out of the situations they're in. So I think more so than our team, our client organizations, it's where we're also helping with that equity inclusion challenges that they're facing.
So innovation and partnership, that's my next question. So how, when you again are working within your work environments, do you foster a culture that is really focused on partnership and innovation, encouraging people to challenge norms or even to think outside of the box?
Yeah, we do something called gigs, and we will set up these committees and let employees reach out. I love that idea. It was not mine. It's been a part of the culture for a while. And other companies have had something similar. I think it's about connecting with your employees, because for example, I'm also a real estate broker. Most of my people don't know that, but I can contribute in lots of ways, and I take candidates around and show them when they have to relocate, and it's a really unique experience, and that's something I bring to the table that out of our 12,000 employees, like a handful know. So you just don't know the skills that your employees have until you ask them. So if you're constantly reaching out with opportunities for committees or groups or collaboration, you'll find that some people have these amazing talents and hobbies, and it's outside of their normal scope of work, but they have wonderful things they can contribute. So for us, it's all about the outreach to our people. It's all about reaching out and saying, hey, we've got this cool project coming up. Who wants to volunteer? And then once you go through your volunteers and you select the skill sets and the people that match, then you can start seeking out and filling in the gaps. I feel like sometimes companies pick their people who are experts and then they just ask, well, who else wants to join? It should be the other way around. Let the teams that have the energy and the passion fill the team that way, and then fill the gaps in with the skill sets that you're missing. So for us, I really try to push for everyone speak up. And again, it has to start from the very first conversation that they feel like they can, because the first time employees feel like they're not being heard or listened to, and I want to clarify, just because listening to and taking action are different things, because some of the ideas are not feasible, but it's how you respond to those ideas. If they feel heard and appreciated and you thoughtfully explain why it can't happen, then they're just as happy as if it actually went through, because they understand that you cared enough to figure it out and come back to them with the answers.
So a coach that I worked with a long time ago said she gathers her team a couple of times a year, takes out a big flip chart and writes at the top of it, "Wouldn't it be fun if ... creating an atmosphere where we can throw out ideas and the goal behind it is searching for joy and fun, even when we're in a serious corporate structure, leads to some super innovative ideas and leads to a playful nature as we're looking through it. So there becomes a lot less judgment, a lot less but ands, a lot less reaction, and just being like, oh, maybe that would be fun. And it gives us something to work with to say, okay, well, these two ideas really work well together. That was you and you. What if you guys combined and figured out how this could work together better? But I think that starting some meetings, I don't know that nobody does this. I mean, somebody does because she taught it to me, but wouldn't it be fun if, and let people's brains go. People are brilliant.
Yes. So, in the DEI space, we're always challenged. There's always something new. There's something in society. In 2024, you can, do any search on any, social media platform, LinkedIn and the like, to find out that, DEI is under, under scrutiny. And at one point, it's actually under attack.
Under attack.
And
Yes.
depending upon, again, the industry that you're in and the like. So, one thing is when you find a common enemy, you band together, right? And then you have to understand what those enemy strengths are and weaknesses are, and then you have to go after. So if you, and again, I'm not trying to make everything a war, but at the end of the day, every day is a war. Some wars have more casualties than others. Some wars are more philosophical than physical. But again, it's always about, and I always say this to people, is like, I actually love conflict. And the reason why I love conflict is because you get to see people at their most truest form. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you think about, you can't defend and advance at the same time. So I can't defend an idea and advance the idea at the same time. I have to do one or the other. Similar with, again, what we're talking about as far as environments, right? We have to think about, again, what people are thinking about, what they want to do, and where's that conflict to understand how we have to overcome that. So I think those are the ways that, again, that we can truly, think about, how to expand these environments, but more importantly, to be innovative, right?
One of the things that I like to do is ask, why are we doing this? What's the reason? Because so often the answer is, I don't know. We've always done it that way. Now, within HR, of course, the answer is often because the government tells us we have to, and we're stuck with that. I mean, we got to fill out those forms, right? It is what it is. But asking the why, what's the purpose? And a lot of times you'll find something that there was a purpose in, 2007 when this started, but that purpose has changed. And so we're no longer doing the thing because it's important. We're doing the thing because we've always done the thing. So that's my key thing is when you want to challenge norms, you need to figure out why we have this norm in the first place. Because we don't want to challenge norms just to challenge norms.
Yeah, I'd say, working in technology, there's always new innovation or buzzword of the year. A few years ago, blockchain. Now it's generative AI or ChatGPT like type of technology. So, annually we have both customer requests and also in our programming to encourage our teams to look into those technology, but more on how can we introduce and help our customers modernize and make use of those technology. I think generative AI being one that is so user-friendly has really gained traction, even though chatbots and generative AI, the core had been around for decades in the past.
Right.
But it's now being popularized, and a lot of it is because it's now so easy to use. You can go online and ask a question and get a very elaborate answer or answer that you've asked the chat to do. So very, really fascinating area. And we have a variety of projects that looks into how can we use that to help create care plans or create mention dementia interpretation, and using those tools to try to advance healthcare in general, and also wrapping around, obviously technology exists, but how do we make it easy to use, even for the front line that, had not been exposed to technology or AI, but they do have access to a phone and be trained to use the phone. How do we bring that really high-end technology, to the hands of health workers that wouldn't have those opportunities otherwise? So we do a variety of team building brainstorming sessions. A lot of that are project oriented. What's also fascinating is across the globe, our customers are at various stages in terms of technology adoption. Some are utilizing QR codes and barcodes as easier ways to authenticate medications that are being dispensed. And some are on supply chain demand prediction. And in the US, we work with insurance companies on population health, predicting whether someone is likely to go to the hospital before they even go to the hospital. Right. So very wide varying technology, and different team members share back in terms of what they've worked on, how they're coming together, and how we ultimately pull these technology pieces into our single ClickMedix platform, and then making that also cheaper, faster to deploy and be used by our customers.
Okay, so the next question is called Feedback Disco. So people imagine feedback as a dance floor. We'd love for you to just explain to us how you create an environment that's kind of alive and vibrant, that allows team members to express themselves and give feedback that then, to your point, gets innovated and used into application.
So I believe that people speak up when they feel not alone. So I do two things. I have one-on-ones with my team. And during those one-on-ones, I ask for feedback on specific things. Then I share all the ideas anonymously to the group in our group meetings once a week. So throughout, like, let's say mine are Monday through Friday. The following Monday when we have our team meeting, I'll say, hey, the topic that I talked to you about, 5 of you mentioned this, 3 of you mentioned that, 2 of you mentioned this. We can only impact one of these right now. So now that you know what your team members are thinking, I'd like you to vote on where you want to make the impact first. And so once they realize that other people think the same way, they're not shy to speak up. And then that's where the ideas come from. And so we say, once we've got the initial groundwork laid for open-mindedness that we're going to make some changes, then I encourage them to consistently bring that feedback throughout the process. And once they feel like, wow, we were actually heard, these things matter, it's much easier to get that continual feedback. So, and then for most important is I always ask, how can I do better for you? Because I feel like as a leader, my job is to remove roadblocks for you, not create problems. So I think if you're constantly asking and not expecting them to just come up to you, it just naturally opens the door for them to want to come talk because they know that you're willing to listen. So the biggest thing is, I think, creating this safe environment and starting with the anonymity of just, here, this is a free space to speak. Here's what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? And telling them that I'm going to bring this to the group anonymously and show them an example of what I'm talking about so they feel comfortable. And then once you deliver the exact way that you said you're going to, it just makes everybody more comfortable. So that's the first one. And then second, as leaders, we need to be asking consistently, how can we be better for you? What is missing? Because each person that we work with is different. And if we're not adjusting our style to who we are mentoring and managing, then they will leave to find the manager that works for them. So you, as a leader, are accountable to be adaptable to your team. It's not your team's job to mold to you. So that's why you're in this position, to be a leader, to help them get to that next step. So if I don't have the feedback on what my people need, I can't adapt. So for me, it's just being accountable to asking for feedback often.
To me, this is the shortest answer of all of them. As a leader, you model alive and vibrant feedback. That's it. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. The more profuse and joyful you are with your feedback, the more likely your people are going to engage in that same type of feedback. Because it feels good and because they know it feels good. So then they share it. It's so simple.
Do you have any tips for leaders as they think about how to do that with others? Because sometimes the power dynamics or the way things are set up in spaces can not set them up to do that comfortably, or they may not know how to do it. So I wonder if you have any ideas.
Like, number one, get over yourself. Honestly, like, get over yourself. And I think that the whole hierarchy systems are shifting quite a bit in a lot of places. There are some older companies that are really still quite rigid, but most companies are expanding the way this hierarchy works. So I don't see this happening quite as often. But really, get over yourself.
So, I do this in a very benign and subversive way, but it's very effective.
Mm-hmm.
When I give an idea, I say, pick it apart.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I want you to know that I don't know everything, and I want your input, but also want the best result. So I'm saying to you, this is what I think. But if there's something wrong with it, you have the opportunity now to tell me, Rob, you are absolutely wrong. Or how you alter that. And I do that frequently and very nonchalant because I want them to make a part of our process of how we build together. And everything is about conditioned behavior, right? If I only do it once out of a million times, no one's going to care. Right. But the one time I don't do is say, hey, Rob, I think I want to say something about that, right? That's what I want. I want to condition them to challenge, because in this world and DI, there's a consistent need to challenge, because what worked yesterday probably won't work tomorrow, right? Yesterday's prices aren't today's prices, right? So we have to always think and understand and challenge that.
And when you're giving feedback, you need to pay attention to all of the things about it. So if I know that you've just had this horrible thing happen in your life, whatever it is, God forbid something horrible happens to you, but you've had this horrible thing happen. And, on the day you find out that your grandmother's cancer is terminal, all right, you're upset and you make a mistake on a report that you do every month and you've never made a mistake before. And me as your boss, and if I come to you and be like, well, listen, you can't do that. That's horrible. This is really bad. I'm not moving in that dance with you. I should know she just found out about her grandmother. She's really upset. This is not the norm. I don't need to address it with her. I just need to correct it. If it's a problem next month, then I will correct it. But I can just correct this now because I know in this dance, I know who you are. I know what's going on. I know this isn't normal for you. So just let's fix it and go on. I'm not going to write you up. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm just going to fix the problem and move on because it is this thing. If this is a consistent problem or everything is fine in your life, as far as I know, and you're a brand new employee and you made this mistake, it's the first time you've run the report, I would be a fool not to sit down with you politely and give that feedback, because this is the first time you've done this report. And if I correct you now, it's so much easier than waiting 6 months out and blowing up and being like, every time you do this wrong. And you're like, what? Nobody ever said anything to me. So paying attention to what's going on around you, the situation at hand. Negative feedback should be given privately. Positive feedback should be given publicly in most situations. If we're in a staff meeting and you tell a dirty joke, I'm going to correct you right then because I want to make it clear to everyone, this is not the time or place for this. And everybody has observed it. You mess up on your report, that's going to be a private discussion.
Yeah, I think I love that phrase, feedback disco, because it is a disco and it starts by saying, I want 50 new CVs by tomorrow. And then you having to communicate, well, let's prioritize and phase this out. So a lot of what I do is really prioritizing, phasing it out, and resource allocation so that it doesn't become a chaotic disco, but organized. Everyone knows where the cocktail bar is, the beer bar is, and the dance floor, so that there is a process and not chaos. So that's how we tend to manage. So it's more or less a matrix way of feedback, right? So by project and by type of technology or feature set we're incorporating, so that for everyone, they have a manageable plate of work that then also has room to cross-pollinate in a sense, so that, this dance floor doesn't become, collision course, but actually, help it become a blooming, fun, enjoyable, productive disco, if you will.
Okay, so this is the last question around budget priorities. So, think again from that restorative people leader perspective. If you had an unlimited budget, what would your top 5 priorities be to build that continuous, engaged work group that you're working with?
Team bonding would be number one, most of all, because in talent and HR, it's often seen as a combative group, even though it really supports a lot of functions. And so we have a difficult job. We live in a negative environment where HR is considered the no fun group, even though we're trying to move the company forward. Talent is always pushing against compensation, and it's just a combative work-life experience for a lot of folks. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. And that doesn't mean it's hateful. It just means we need people to get hired and we can only pay so much. So it's just the nature of what we do. So I think team bonding is the most important thing, of being able to just be around each other, understand each other. I think learning and development is a very big one for us, because we need to be able to foster growth and ideas. And then lastly, brand management is so important when it comes to the people side of things, that companies forget that if you're not invested in your recruitment team, because they're touching the market more than anybody else is. So if they don't have the right material, the right story, the right message, your brand is going to suffer regardless of what kind of content you put out there. So you need to invest in the people, their skills, their knowledge for sales, their ability to connect with humans, and giving them those growth skills actually makes them a better all-around person. And because they have all these attributes that they didn't have before. So for me, it's learning and development, it's culture development, and then it's brand management, awareness, and training.
This is a good one. The first place my head went to was solid, almost some type of coaching at every level. Making sure every employee has an immediate place to go to for support, someone who understands their position, someone who can help them get ahead, etc. That same person, I don't know if this is the same budget line or a second budget line, but that same person should be responsible for helping people to create growth plans. Every single person in your team should be on a growth plan all the time. Sometimes that means growth out of your company. That's part of your job too. If we're creating a restorative system, that system grows and feeds itself over and over and over again. That's the idea. So your job is to grow people no matter where they end up. So I think that's a really important bit. I think the next bit is vacation pay. Vacation pay, parental leave, sick leave, bereavement leave, all of these things. Create enough flexibility with your budget so that your people can live lives. We are not robots anymore. We were for a few years, but we're not anymore. So create enough space in your budget that it's fine if people need time. I think that's critical. I think the next thing that's critical that would probably never make it anywhere is trauma healing. No one's putting this in a budget, but I do believe that we can create a perfectly safe workplace, a utopia of workplace, but I'm going to bring my bag of trauma with me to my workplace, and it's not going to get solved there. And you could tell me that I don't have to push it, and I don't have to be a perfectionist, and I don't have to people please, but I'm not going to listen to you because I don't trust you, because I don't trust anybody, because that's what my trauma taught me. So I do believe that the initial budget, I think that means, actually, this is what I really believe.
So, I think the main way a leader can ensure that resources are being used appropriately is to have a better than good understanding of the purpose and mission of the organization. If you don't have a clear, concise, very, very vivid understanding of what that organization needs to do, and more importantly, what's your role in that, you can have millions and millions of resources, you will never hit the mark. Right. You can also, by having that understanding, do a whole lot more with less, because you're very strategic and pinpointed with your operation. So I believe as a leader, especially senior leaders, your understanding of what the organization purpose, mission, and value, as well as with direction, has to be almost like, the back of your hand. And then you apply your framework, your perspective, your role, your remit to that to ensure that there's alignment with it. And if there's some things that need to be bolstered more as a result, that's where the resources go. If something is status quo or is going to diminish over the next quarters or so, then you work that accordingly. You really have to find a way to truly understand the highs and lows of the movements of the organization, because I think from a budget perspective, there's a lot of ways you can maximize and create 2 + 2 = 5, creating synergy by understanding where the overall organization. I'm always looking for a bargain when I'm looking. If I can apply my retail behaviors to corporate, right? I don't want to pay full price for anything.
Right.
Okay. Because I know that, one, it doesn't cost that much, and we're paying for someone's, ego and anything else, right? So I take that philosophy and I apply it to business where, okay, where are things already happening in the organization that I can just attach ourselves to without disrupting their program, disrupting their goals, but still bolstering their goals, right? I create almost like an immediate impact just by being in the room with them and being attached to that. So that way I can save our resources for my department, but at the same time support someone else. And that way more people will include me to learn about what they're doing. And then now I can leverage their budget, their resources to make what they want happen. So I still have my cachet, so to speak.
Yes.
And then when no one can do anything, right? They've already seen me working with them and my team working with them. Then they have, well, we need an extra X for that. Let me see what I can do. I already have it. I already know it. So now I'm using, again, good budget reallocation tactics, not just to actually fulfill the organization, but more importantly, building and strengthening relationships with the organization so everyone knows we're all in one accord. Because if DEI is a standalone effort and a tagged on, a bolted on activity, it's never going to work. But if you can work with the organization and embed the DEI and understand what they're working towards and then leverage their resources first, then yours, then it's a more holistic approach to DEI, and it actually expands much faster than you do otherwise.
And then with that, I also would want to spend money on doing a comp analysis for the employees, especially right now when we've had terrible inflation. Salaries are changing rapidly. And if you want to retain your employees, and if you want to be able to hire new employees, you really need to be up to date on what salaries are for what the market rate is. And you want to make sure that you're paying everybody fairly. And this shouldn't, the fairness, it always boggles my mind how this can get out of control in companies, because you should be looking at that with every hire you make. If I am bringing in someone, I need to be making sure before I make that offer that the salary that we're offering goes along with the people that are already in the position or whatever. This is why I don't, as a hiring manager, I don't negotiate salary. If I make you an offer, this is what the offer is. You can take it or leave it. You can come back to me and say, I'd like $5,000 more, and I'll be proud of you for standing up for yourself, but I'm not going to change it because I've already done the internal equity analysis. This is where you fit in, and this is what your salary is. This is the salary for the position, and whether you fill it or someone else fills it, this is how much they're going to be paid. And that keeps things even. And I've already taken into account that you have, the extra experience in kite manufacturing. So therefore you're going to get this bonus, but that's in the file of how we calculated your salary. Oh yeah, she can do kites and nobody else can do kites. That's why she's making $5,000 more a year.
Well, I appreciate your saying. I just want to point out, you're talking about being proactive, right? As the hiring manager, already doing the work so that you feel confident and clear about what you're offering. And I think that that's an important point, frankly, because I don't know if that's happening everywhere.
Exactly. And a lot of times what happens is that a hiring manager will decide, I want this candidate. And then they become irrationally attached to that candidate. And so, well, if we don't say yes, they're going to, walk away. Okay, we had 60 qualified people apply for this job. If they don't take it, there's somebody else. Now, in some positions, there's nobody else. It's you or nobody. In which case, I'm going to need to do that analysis is what is the true market rate? Because if there's nobody else out there, you're worth more. And if that's the case, and I already have 2 people doing the same job, but you're the only other person I can find, and you need $10,000 more, and I know that if I don't give it to you, I'm not going to find anybody else. I need to also take that into mind with my 2 current employees, because everybody needs to be earning the same. If I give you the $10,000 more and you happen to be a different race, gender, religion, age than the other people, they're going to come back when they find out, because they will find out. It's just how it works, and be like, hey, well, why is this person making 10,000 more and they're a different race than I am? And you're going to be in the position of proving that it was your panic that made you do it. That's not really what a court's going to believe anyway. So yes, I would like to be very proactive. I'd like to spend money being proactive about that. And I don't know how many priorities I have just said, but those are within an HR department. And of course, HR salaries should always be higher.
Interesting. I think a lot of our team members are pulled in on different projects in different directions. I think, we have infinite budget. I would love for them to come up with, what is the next big thing you want to build? Because a lot of our priorities are based on client demands. What's fascinating is that we, may learn from one client and then suggest improvements for another client, because, in healthcare, it's so about how can we improve altogether. So I would love to figure out, based on, everything that we've learned, what would be this ultimate project idea that you may want to build. I'd certainly put on some perimeters, use of AI, use of, computer vision, and, the up-and-coming technologies that are really helping us. I'd also look at aggregating the amount of data that we have, which is, over the past decade. What can we learn? What can we learn from, India versus Pakistan in terms of chronic diseases, or parts of Latin America, the few countries we're in, or Africa? What are we seeing as a global trend in diseases? We did a number of projects on COVID, and surprisingly and not surprising, parts of Africa did extremely well in terms of lower disease prevalence and just lower spread overall relative to other countries. So just really fascinating data. And I think some are, similarities between malaria and COVID. Those are just data, and I wish we had more time and effort to spend on those. And then correlation in diabetes and dementia. So, we have a lot of data aggregated, de-identified, of course, across our different clientele. And it would just be fascinating to have some dedicated effort to look at what are the trends, what can we learn from it. And we are already doing some of that, particularly on interventions. We did a lot of reverse innovation, learning what's happening in sub-Saharan African countries. The concept of health workers, door-to-door and in-home visit is very common in those areas, and becoming common in the US, especially in the senior Medicare population. They would just call different things. Here we call them case managers. Elsewhere we call them, village health workers, or health workers in general. So we do a lot of that cross-learning on the intervention side, but it would be great to just look at disease maturity, correlate it with demographics, correlate it with treatments. I mean, just a lot of potential effort there. And I'd love my team to, think about what they want to do in terms of, they've touched every project and understand the ins and outs of the technology side, coming together with the customer success team members, what can we build together, assuming we have unlimited budget. That would be amazing.
Thank you for watching. Please check out our upcoming Top Restored People Leader interviews. As always, stay connected and stay restored.